Right.
Who was really Mike? No, Matthew. What's
Martin.
Mart?
And Mutz, as I remember, played a trumpet, and as a trumpet player, he was very good. As when we first went back to New Jersey, it was a case of going to a hunky dance, that
Right.
where Hungarians would come together and all night long play the polka kind of music and stuff, and the food all night long, and people were expected to bring their children, and so we came and we were part of this, and so it's grown people doing all of their things, kids doing all of their things, and it was strange. Just because it was, I mean, it certainly was strange to us that you got kids and adults all
So you
hooping it up together.
You could have all the pop you wanted to drink. You could have all the hot dogs and stuff that they had to eat that you wanted. And they stayed there till like 2 o'clock in the morning. They were having this hunky dance and everybody was dancing. And so it was kind of neat to be people watching and playing with the other kids and tag and hide and go seek and all this other stuff.
As I remember, that was the first time we had slept in a bed with a feather bed.
Yeah.
And and a feather bed, it's at least a foot thick or whatever, but it's huge in terms of a feather bed.
Like the mattress is feathers, the quilt are feathers, and the pillows are feathers. So when you sink down in them, everything just goes right around you, and there's this little peephole comes out, that's right here, and you really feel like you're sinking down into it. Maybe that's why they called it down.
All right, maybe we ought to get into more of the history thing, so at least we get that into our first.
How are we doing time wise? What is our?
Oh, it's 4:30.
It's good.
Okay. When is supposed to be? This is 5.
Okay, so that takes care of Patterson. Grandpa made application to go to officer candidate school. Turned out that a lot of officers were being killed over in the Pacific, so he wanted to go to officer candidate school, not to be killed, but to become an officer. They had a lot of openings, and during the time that up to this point, up to that war, it was very hard to make rank. A lot of enlisted men retired as a private, and which was very little money, but it was income. And but now during the war, you have a lot of rank going around. So he wanted to be an officer, and it also afforded him the chance to come back to the United States. And so he went to Columbus, Georgia, at Officers Candidate School. Do you remember the name of it?
Fort Benning.
Fort Benning. I was trying to think of that. I couldn't.
Fort Benning, yeah.
And was one of the oldest men to go through Fort Benning. I think he was 37 or something at that time. And it was a real rush course to become an officer. So you had to learn field problems, algebra, mathematics,
The map reading,
all the things that and all the things that an officer learned, etiquette and how to be a gentleman, when to be a gentleman, and all that type of thing. And so he told me once. He said that I told him, I said, you know algebra and geometry and all that? He said, no. I said, well, how did you get through Officers Candidate School? And he said, well, my thing was I could lead troops. He said I could get people to do things. He said a lot of those young kids couldn't. He said so I'd do a trade-off. I would help them out in their problem. They would help me in my classroom. So that's how he got through. I mean, with a 4th grade education, you're not going to get through Officers Candidate School. I don't care who you are.
and it always bothered him. I mean, and in a way that he had only an elementary school education, and he would say, and it also always bothered him that he was born in Hungary, because somehow he thought people could hold that against him, and so he tried to play, always be kind of low key on things, and said, "No, I could never be an officer. It's not that I'm not smart enough, but I just haven't gone to school, and I don't know these other things that people who have graduated from high school know."
So was he an officer? Did he become an officer?
He became a officer. He retired as a captain after 32 years or something in the Army. Total of 32 years. And he probably would have died in the Army if the whole business in Alaska had not happened. Because as I looked at the mounds of paperwork that they had to go, that basically my mother, as the executor of first the estate for Joe Chisel, and then for Emily Chisel, it was just, they must have hired all the lawyers in Alaska just to keep the thing straight.
What went on? What he was,
But as they said, Joe Chisel always bought property and practically never sold property. And so that for all kinds of reasons he would buy property, not necessarily good property. And but that was just part of his, this workaholic kind of thing. He didn't have a nice, neat plan for doing things. He just did. And so that as he got more senile, and as I understand, maybe on your list, it seemed to me it was like something like 1946 or something that Joe Chisel ultimately died. And so there was all of this property and stuff, and we weren't up in Alaska. And so Emily Chisel, kind of fell heir to all of this, and she could care less about this. And so there was all kinds of things that were happening, all the way from my grandmother giving stuff away to people living in whatever houses and things that they had, and not charging any rent for them. And then when something would break, the people who were living in the houses would sue my grandmother because they didn't fix it fast enough. And it was, and you got to pay the taxes and things and all of this.
She backed the town drunk with an automobile agency. Protected those trucks. And, but we took thousands of dollars were given to him, and he was having trucks brought up and sold to people, and that's when Grandpa was in the hospital. But so we went from Patterson, New Jersey, then we went down to Columbus, Georgia to be with my dad, and we lived in a black district down there because it was hard to get homes to rent, and that's where we were chased home from school. Do you remember those?
Vaguely, when you were talking about it, I vaguely remember that.
And I remember we could run just past this one street, and now we're in the black area, and they would stop. They wouldn't come into the black area.
Because these are white kids who, because we were Yankees, and and of course they were Southerners, and so it was all right to beat up on Yankees.
Yankees were throwaways. But so we'd get running. We'd just get outside, and Bob would say, "Let's go!" And then we'd run like the devil, boy. And that's we'd cross that street, and then we could stand on that curb and say, "Why don't you guys come on over here?" But they didn't come over there, and we never had any problem in that area. We stayed there until Dad finished OCS, and then we went back to New Jersey after he finished OCS, and that was the first time that he had been home to see Grandma in over 20 years.
Wow.
And she was mad. I
Really?
mean, she was ticked.
I never heard that.
And I'll never forget, being a kid, this is his mother, and they're meeting, and she smacked him. She,
After all
and
those
she said,
years.
"Why you don't come home here? What's wrong with you? You don't like your family?" you know, on and on and on. And he didn't get any words at all. You know, then she kissed him, then she hugged him, then she smacked him again. You know, what's going on? And then all the sisters and so forth came down to see him. And Rose and our father were real close. We were very close. And
Because Rose was the youngest, right?
She was born here.
Yeah, she was born in the United States. Yeah.
and it was
But there was, you should say there was this thing why your dad, he of all of them lived within a block of each other, but he took off. He enlisted, lied about his age, enlisted in the army,
Right.
and it was gone.
Yeah,
Even when John
he
died,
went.
right? He
when
must
he
not
was
have come
12
home.
years old, he left his mother and father and lived with another family. And I can't remember that name, but I remember them, my aunts telling me about that. And that he lived with them, and he wouldn't come home.
How come?
Something happened, there was an argument in the family, and it's something to do with his brother John. And my dad used to get all blamed for everything that John did, because they couldn't punish John because John was sick.
John was always
So
sick.
they would keep smacking him around all the time, and he got tired of it, and so he left, and then he went to work. See, at that time, kids could work in the plants. You know? Even little kids could work in the plants. If you could sweep the steps, you got a couple pennies a day. And so,
And then John died while he was in
Right.
Panama.
and that was I think the real crowning thing to him, and John were real close. So we went back to New Jersey, and then he had his first assignment, which was to go to Leesville, Louisiana. And so we headed across country.
What do you think that year was?
Leesville, I said it was 43, 44, because I remember we were in Leesville in 40 when the war was over in Germany. Now, which one was over first? Germany was? Yeah. We were,
Day.
no, I'm sorry, we were in McAllister when the war was over. But that's where they had the German troops.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was a prisoner of war camp in McAllister, Oklahoma.
In Leesville, he was like the commander of a rest camp for guys that just come back from overseas combat. So they had like a tent city made up.
That was
real nice tents.
Lake Charles.
Right. And they could swim, and they could do pretty much what they wanted. And they still had their regular duties.
Eat jambalaya, drink beer, lots of shrimp, as I remember.
And he was, and then that was up in Lake Charles that he had that. And then he was down in Camp Polk, which was a regular army post, and they had the airborne were there.
Armored divisions.
Pretty rough outfits. Airborne were a lot like you look at Marines. They're just a wild bunch of guys. And they're all trained and ready for war. Let me at 'em, let me at 'em. And so if they don't get any action, they usually go down and tear somebody's town up, and that's what they were doing in Leesville. And Grandpa, or our father, was in charge of the MPs. And so he had to appease the townspeople, because what they would do is they went into town, and not only would they tear up the bars and stuff, they would rip the bars right out of them, set them up in the middle of the street, and all the booze and so forth, and declare war on the townspeople. And so and I remember him coming in, all his shirt, uniform all bloody. You remember that? And it looked like somebody threw blood on it or something. So what he did to control it, he needed some of the meanest, toughest men that he could find, and he couldn't find that from the regular ranks. So he went to the stockade, and he told these guys, if you'll do as I tell you to do, and keep your nose clean, his favorite expression, he said, I'll make sure you don't have to come back here until this time. And so he gave them a bunch of those batons, those batons, like a club about this long, They got the biggest, meanest people he could find, and they went down and cleaned up on the paratroopers and got them back to town, got them sobered up, got them back to what they're supposed to be doing. But it was a real war was going on there. And our father was the type of person, you can give him an assignment, and you could write that off as done. No matter what it was done. And that's what he did. That little short guy went down there and led these people down there, and he cleaned up that mess. He got the town, had to appease all the town fathers, and people had to be paid, and all that kind of stuff. Also, when we were in Leesville, our brother was born, John, and he passed away maybe 4 months, 3 or 4 months, and some kind of a milk problem. I'm thinking it was that milk rope. It was like he was choking.
I never heard of milk rope, but yeah, but when you're saying that, thinking, whatever it was.
The doctor came to the house, and Bob and I never forget, we were sitting on the couch, huddled together on the couch, and there's this doctor, and he pulls up, you know what they're doing, the adrenaline, local for the kid. And I said, oh my God, he's going to kill him.
You said he was on the kitchen table.
Yeah, the kitchen table. And I thought, boy, that's it. Doctor's going to kill him. Must really be bad. And then shortly after that, he pronounced he was dead. And, but we didn't, and everybody in the family naturally was really tore up about it. We cried for maybe 3 or 4 days. The whole family was just bad. So my mother was really in bad straits. My dad wasn't. He had a way of making, trying. If you had a bad situation, try to make a good situation out of that. Like recoup, take what you got, and try to make the best out of it. And I can remember him talking to her. It could have been right after the funeral about my mother was saying something about she didn't want any more children. My dad was saying, well, we could adopt children, and that just made her fly into a fury and said she didn't want any children, her own children. And they were arguing and bickering about this kind of stuff. And she was really upset, so she went to some type of a hospital. I don't know if it was a mental hospital or what, but I know we went a couple of times to see her there. It kind of reminded me of the hotel setting. I remember tan walls. She was in the room all by herself.
Do you remember the funeral?
Yes.
There was a funeral for the baby?
And he was buried in Leesville, Louisiana. Cemetery. I think that's the most emotional our family has ever been. And it was a pretty emotional family.
And he doesn't remember?
Yeah, because they used the little baby
Casket.
basket. That was tough.
Well, whatever it is,
We were also happy to have our old brother, and then have him taken away was much more than we could bear at that time. So Bob and I were tired of beating on each other. We thought we had another one come along, we could transfer it.
And then she didn't have any more, or she did have another one, or she had a miscarriage?
I don't know.
yeah, as far as I know, that was the last one, the only one.
I don't, see, we weren't told, our parents didn't talk to us about what had happened. And we didn't go through it, and you gotta talk it through and what's happened, and kids have a hard time understanding what happened. Bob and I, we used to talk everything over between us, but we didn't know everything, but we'd do the best we could to try to make sense of it. And so anyway, and we were taken care of by Aunt Fanny. who was about a 400-pound black woman who was about 5 foot tall, had arms on her like huge, and don't mess with me. And she was the nicest, kindest person you ever want, but don't get in her kitchen, and don't be taking food out of the refrigerator. And she had, my dad would get black market meat, you know, from the chow hall and stuff, come in with pork chops, and nobody could get pork steaks. And so she'd say, okay, mister, you get one steak, you kids get half a steak apiece, you get, you know, and make, because she had 10 kids of her own. You know? And so she was used to making do with what you have and stretching as far as my dad was, you know, he thought, well, I got all this meat, we can have a nice steak dinner, and you can have one too, and well, she really did, and she took it home. And plus clothes and everything, you know, they gave her.